Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about hospital wards because for several reasons last week this issue loomed really large because there was a series of tweets on Twitter by a woman who was experiencing the policy of housing men on women's hospital wards at first hand, and my heart went out to her. I mean, all of us were just... A vulnerable woman with a very, very serious health condition, recently diagnosed, dripped up to the eyeballs with cannulas, in need of investigation for a serious illness. And she's on a ward and she notices a man has come in and they've told her that this person is called Barbara. But when his friend visits, he calls him like Alfred or something. So it's clearly a case of self-ID, that this person has just decided, I'm Barbara today. And then the hospital has to go along with it because that's the policy that they've decided upon. So she raised the issue with the nurse. The nurse was dismissive. The nurse gaslighted her that, you know, there wasn't a problem. And then lo and behold, doctors appeared and discharged her. So she was basically, you know, neglected, medically neglected. You know, she needed to be in the hospital. She needed to be on the ward. There was no plan to discharge her that day until all of a sudden this happened, and then the tune changed. So, you know, this is so outrageous and wrong. And she's the only woman that spoke up in that environment, but she won't be the only woman that noticed, and she won't be the only woman that was scared, and the only woman that was uncomfortable, and the only woman that thought, hang on, aren't we supposed to have single-sex wards? I've been following this, Gillyism is her Twitter handle, and it has been heartbreaking to read her tweets subsequent to going home, where she talks about how, you know, she now has no trust for the health professionals at all. I mean, you know, this is a woman living with chronic illness, disability. She needs to be able to use the health service because, you know, it's important that she's able to access those services for her health and well-being. It can have fatal consequences to neglect your health because you are scared of the health professionals, or you are scared of the other patients. Because this guy, Barbara Alfred, was violent. He was violent on the ward. Now, it's not that women in hospitals are never violent, okay? I've worked a lot in mental health, and there have been women who have been exhibiting all sorts of behaviours that are kind of socially unacceptable, socially discouraged. That's one of the signs and symptoms that something's not right. And I'm sure that this happens in physical hospitals as well. Where I haven't witnessed it. I've only done a little bit of work in normal hospitals, in physical health hospitals, and I haven't witnessed a great deal of that kind of behaviour. But I know that it does happen. But you know, women as a class are just not as violent as men, so it just doesn't happen as often as it does with men. I would say probably it happens about 1/100th of the amount of time that it happens with men. Certainly we're looking at, you know, 50 incidents regarding men for every one incident regarding women. And that's reflected in our figures that we know about for criminality and so on. So having a selection of men on women's wards is statistically going to weight them into places where there is more violence. And people aren't set up for it, you know. The nurses aren't set up for it. They don't want it. You know, you get different, like, you know, when you're at work and you work in the NHS and say you're going to have some babies or something like that, one of the things that they do when they do the risk assessment for you when you're pregnant is they look at, you know, where are you working? What kind of risks do you face in this job? It's a completely different set of risks if you're going to include men on those wards. Because some of those women will be there and they will have had a hysterectomy recently, or they will be bearing children, or they will have a, bad back from a patient injury from poor moving and handling practice 20 years ago. We are not all in a position where we are able to deal with violent men when we have selected into jobs where we're expecting to work with women. There are many, many reasons why it's always been my preference to work with women, but certainly, the fact that women aren't as violent is a big part of it. Anyway, so I've been linking to the tweets. You can read them. I really hope that you will go along and offer her a word of encouragement. What was really great to see was that when she heard about this going on, Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne, who is a champion for women in the House of Lords, she said, "Don't move, stay where you are, let me sort it out." And of course, I'm sure that if they had managed to not discharge her immediately in a panic about what do we do in this situation, I'm sure that if it had got to the point of negotiation and PALS had got involved, that's the Patient Advice and Liaison Service, which you can always turn to when you're a patient, and they are supposed to be able to negotiate difficult relationships that you have with the staff, or decisions that are not easy to understand or that you disagree with. So they're always good people to get in touch with. But anyway, so she said, "Don't move, stay where you are, and I'll try and sort it out." But Jill was discharged, so she wasn't able to do that. So we come on to what's going on this week, and Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne has been working in the background with David Blencathra, Lord Blencathra, and we all know that I'm a fan of both of these members of the House of Lords. They have been working on an amendment because at the moment the Health and Care Bill is going through the Houses of Parliament. So these things, they have a process where they go to the House of Commons and then they go to the House of Lords and then they go back to the House of Commons. And in between there are like committees and people, ask for more advice and they get more information, and they're supposed to like fine tune the laws so that they're appropriate and proportionate and fair and equitable. And so Lord Blencathra and Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne have together moved a new amendment into the Health and Care Bill, Amendment 297F. And they are actually scheduled to discuss this today. I will be doing videos subsequent. I'm going to use the hashtag Keep Wards Single Sex because it kind of echoes the prisons, Keep Prisons Single Sex tag. I haven't seen that there is a campaign already ready running, but if there is, obviously I'll use that tag too. If you want to search my videos, if you use Keep Wards Single Sex, I'll put a playlist and put all the videos in it. So this amendment reads, Amendment 297F, insert the following new clause, quotation marks, references to women inpatients. 1, brackets, an NHS trust must not record or refer to women who A, have requested a sex-specific ward, or B, have made a complaint to the relevant NHS trust about being accommodated with inpatients who have undergone gender reassignment in pejorative terms, including the term transphobe, on that ground alone. Number 2, an NHS trust must not record women who have undertaken the action referred to in subsection 1A or 1B as having committed a non-crime hate incident on that ground alone. Seems really appropriate. I mean, you have to be able to say to women that you are allowed to discuss these things. It is a factor in your care, and you are allowed to discuss any factors in your care with your care team. I mean, that's your right. That's how you get the best care that we all need. And then we've got Amendment 297G. So this is the next kind of little bit of it. And it says, sex-specific wards for inpatients. Number 1, where a person is an inpatient, that person must be ordinarily treated with respect to accommodation and facilities in the hospital by reference to their natal sex. Number 2, in particular, accommodation and facilities for biological sex women must be used exclusively by natal women. Number 3, NHS trusts must ensure that people who identify as a gender different from their natal sex are offered accommodation and facilities equal to those who identify with a gender that is the same as their natal sex. Number 4, this section applies whether or not the person has a gender recognition certificate. 5, within 12 months, the Secretary of State must ensure accommodation and facilities are available for the purposes of this section. So again, like the Amendment 97ZA in the Police Crimes Bill, which specified that people who had a transgender identity should be accommodated either with their birth sex or in a unit specifically designated for them, if that was, not considered appropriate. They're once again saying that people should either be on a ward with other people of their birth sex, or they should be provided with an equal facility as they would have done if they were on a ward with their own sex. So whether that's a small ward that they designate for people with a gender reassignment protected characteristic, or whether they give them like a room at the end of a ward, there are compromises that will be made. This is a growing problem. The population of people that are claiming these identities is growing still. I believe it will peak and then it will decline, but at the moment that population is still growing, and this is an urgent problem. So I'll be following that debate with interest, and I will ensure that you are fully updated. Once again, if you have a moment to write to Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne at the House of Lords, or to Lord David Blencathra, and thank them for moving this amendment, and thank them for acknowledging that this is a rights conflict that we need to negotiate, that would be really appreciated. I know that Baroness Nicholson spoke at Speaker's Corner when Posy Parker was there on Sunday 2 days ago. And, she talked about how encouraged she was by all of these women who have been in this fight, and have shown her the ropes and kind of got her up to speed with a lot of things very quickly. I think these lords and certain of the other lords are doing an absolutely cracking job to try and stay on top of this mess, which was created by it's all been created by the Gender Recognition Act. If you didn't have a Gender Recognition Act and these legal fictions of gender recognition certificates, then people would just have a birth sex. That's it, end of. And because they've got this situation where some people have an intention to reassign their gender, and that gives them this protected characteristic of gender reassignment, which is in the Equality Act as a protected characteristic on the same level with race, with age and with sex, this gives this population a series of rights which can only be won at the expense of women's rights. So there's a conflict there, and we need to negotiate it. And now finally the silence is lifting and we're able to have those public conversations, because nobody wants to see anybody hurt, humiliated, left out. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about women's legal rights to safety, to dignity, and to privacy, and the acknowledgement in the Equality Act that in specific cases, such as in hospitals, we have every right to single-sex accommodation. And we're not going to give up that right. So thanks for joining me for the video today. As I said, if you want to follow this topic, I am going to be using the tag Keep Wards Single Sex. There may be other tags that are emerging from this movement, and obviously I'll update you if there's any news about those. I'm going to create a playlist similar to the Keep Prison Single Sex playlist, where I will put the content related to this. Write to your MPs, write to your lords, write to Dr. Kate Coleman of Keep Prison Single Sex. She's doing a fantastic job. Chuck £5 in her crowdfunder because she needs it. And she is a brilliant advocate for us. In the meantime, thank you for your support. I am absolutely blown away to have been mentioned by Karen Davis during a live stream, by getting comments from some of my YouTube heroes. Thank you to Maria McLaughlin for saying in a chat that she admired me the other day. I admire her a lot more, I suspect. So many. I can't possibly list them all. But it's really wonderful that there is this supportive community of women. Benji, I couldn't forget Benji, who has been so welcoming, so warm, and it is so appreciated. So if you would like to like and subscribe and share the content, that would be brilliant. If you want to support me to do this project, I'm now spending some time every day creating content for the channel. If you would like to support me in doing that, my PayPal details are in the description box. I have been given some donations already, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. It's been amazing to feel that support, that practical support. It makes a huge difference, so thank you for that. So I'll see you again soon.